Hello, thank you so much for joining this session because saving our planet is a communications challenge, and that's one of the reasons I helped set up Comms Declare, which is trying to get the communications industries to actually support climate action and not reckless overconsumption of goods we don't need. So let's go through a couple of tips of the way you can use communications as part of your climate emergency declaration. Now, when there's an emergency, what we normally see from governments are massive information campaigns, right, to gain support and change behaviour. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that with the climate emergency. What we are seeing is private industry, absolutely unrestricted, ramping up as much support as possible for polluting behaviours and polluting companies. So here's just some examples: big cars, petrol companies, sponsorships of sports, greenwashing, and sometimes just straight up lying, misinformation and disinformation from opponents of climate solutions. So Comms Declare started the Fossil Ad Ban campaign 2 years ago because fossil fuels are the new tobacco. We did this campaign with a health frame because globally, air pollution from burning fossil fuels actually kills more people than tobacco, and very few people breathe clean air. So we've banned tobacco advertising in Australia. Let's try banning fossil fuel advertising, or at least putting in some restrictions, putting in some labels so people can make more informed decisions. The progress we've made so far: 16 councils, including Sydney, have voted for fossil fuel restrictions. Every council has been different in what they've put in. We've had bills introduced in New South Wales and the ACT, and there's also a greenwashing federal inquiry underway. Overseas, in France, all ads for fossil fuel energies are banned. We've seen bans in major cities: Amsterdam, Stockholm, many more. I'm starting to lose count. And some of these bans aren't just for fossil fuels, they're also for high carbon products. So big cars, airlines, and one or two places have actually banned meat advertising. We've had bills introduced for fossil fuel advertising bans in Canada and Ireland, and EU is all over stronger greenwashing laws. Basically, the message is restrictions on fossil fuel advertising and high carbon advertising are inevitable. And in fact, the head of one of the big outdoor advertising companies admitted that just a few days ago at a forum I was at. So you've declared a climate emergency, but you want to harmonise that across all your business, including communications, which is absolutely vital. Here's a couple of ways that you can do it. If you have an events or sponsorship or partnerships policy, very often those policies will have prohibited partners. Just add fossil fuels to those. Often, it's add alcohol, gambling, add fossil fuels. If you have advertising infrastructure inside your council, so if you have bus shelters or billboards that you have third-party advertising on, you are within your rights to ask in your next advertising agreement that fossil fuels are not promoted on any of that infrastructure. And another thing that we have seen from councils is that they've adjusted their assets or building policies to prohibit fossil fuel advertising on those properties. So we're talking community centres, sports fields, and we have had councils do this. So if there's a sports team playing at one of your fields, they can't put up a banner if they have a fossil fuel sponsor. They can't put up a banner for that sponsor. If you are a leader, what we need from you is to speak up. And what we've seen from research done, particularly by Behavioural Insights divisions in the UK, is that politicians and trusted organisations supporting climate solutions is absolutely essential for social proof and the mass behaviour change that we need across the country in order to properly tackle this problem. What we're not seeing from governments is the message of urgency. Of course, we've talked about a climate emergency, which helps with that, but anything you can do to boost that is wonderful. And, you know, councils have been leading on this, but we really do need federal and state governments to step up. So anything you can do to pressure them to do the social licence work, to do the emissions reductions work, and communications, and reduce demand for polluting products is absolutely essential. The IPCC says behaviour change will be responsible for 40 to 70% of all emissions reductions by 2050. So that's less driving, less flying, etc. But we're not telling people about that. We're not asking them to change their behaviour. So that's actually a really essential part that's being missed at the moment. One other thing I suggest is to ignore the deniers. Don't try and change their minds. They're only 10% of the population. Overwhelmingly, the population knows about climate change, cares about climate change, but is either disengaged or doesn't know what to do about it. So talk to them, get them to change their behaviour. There's worse things than being called woke. Let's move on. From a from a communications professional standpoint, when you're talking to communities, and I guess this is more for councils that are trying to do climate projects, you need to talk to your communities in the frame of the values that they care about. So it's not about what we want to say, it's what they need to hear in order to persuade them to get on board with your projects. So if you're framing your climate comms, trying to get support for a project, but your community is somewhat resistant or conservative, the best tip is to actually talk about the children's future. That is something that everyone cares about. It's a really good way to start the conversation. Another way is to say, we want to preserve nature and enjoy a healthy environment. And a good phrase is, for a better future, let's keep reducing climate pollution. That is a non-political way to get into the conversation that will be more easily digested by slightly resistant communities. If your community is even more resistant, there's other tips, but let's start with this one. The common value problem solution framework is a really good way to have these conversations. So you start with your value, which is we want our children to grow up in a healthy environment. Then frame the problem in your terms. So, but gas corporations are increasing climate pollution to protect their profits. That doesn't sound very good, is it? But look, council's got this easy solution. We're putting in more solar power. And that is a way to frame the conversation so you're more likely to get support for an initiative like putting in solar power. Now, if your community is more resistant and you can't even talk about climate change with them, if they're under the pump, if they're really suffering because of the cost of living crisis, let's talk about the cost of living crisis, right? So we want to be able to afford energy and have a decent standard of living. But energy companies keep putting up prices while making record profits. Let's take the power back with a community microgrid. So you're talking about a value that the community has, you're framing the problem in your own terms, and you're delivering an easy solution, which also, yay, reduces emissions. Quick tips on communication. Show proof of progress already made. If you've done things in the past, or if you know of solutions that are already happening, for example, big companies that are making progress on net zero, talk about that progress, make it sound as part of a progression, not new, not risky. Give hope and easy solutions. Use the term climate pollution, not emissions. We need to try and get away from jargon. Emissions, people don't understand what it means. They don't understand what net zero means. Use everyday language. Don't preach. Don't tell people you should do this, you should do that. People are sick of it. You're the government. Give them the solution, but just make it easy and attractive. And also repeat, repeat, repeat. People need to hear something about 7 times before it starts to sink in. And that's a really important part of changing the narrative, changing behaviour. Just keep embedding those messages. I've gone through this super, super fast. I'm very, very sorry. But look, if you are interested in having a fossil ad ban or a formal fossil ad ban in your council, please get in touch. I will help write changes to your policies. I'll help write the notice of motion. I'll do everything we can to support you. Just drop us a line at hello@comsdeclared.org. I'm gutted that I'm not there today to meet everyone, but thanks very much for your time and for the opportunity to speak. Bye-bye.